We're talking today with Maurice Lehmann of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, can you begin with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
Well, Jim, I was born in 1924, March 23rd, in Englewood Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, and that was on the south side of Chicago. And we lived there for about 5 or 6 years, and then my father decided we would move to one of the suburbs of Chicago, which was Villa Park.
Okay.
And really that's almost like a suburb of Wheaton. And so we moved out there in 1929.
Okay. And what was your father doing for a living at that time?
He was in the publishing business, worked for Lorenz Publishing. It was a church and school music publishers, and they sold music all over America and overseas.
Okay. Now, did he have steady work through the Depression?
Yes, he did. He was cut back during the Depression. He was cut back quite a few hours, and he went out and sold AAA insurance to people, would knock on doors in the afternoons, because he was cut back to part-time. But then at the end of World War II, the Lorenz family sent him a check for all that he missed during the war. And he stayed with them for 45 years, which was quite a thing to do.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
All right. And then, did you finish high school?
Oh, yes.
And when did you graduate?
In 1942, I graduated from Wheaton Academy, Wheaton, Illinois. Then I went on to Wheaton College. And in March of my first year, I was drafted out of the college, along with 16 or 18 of my close friends. We were all drafted about the same time.
Did they allow you to finish the term, or did you
No.
have to go right away?
I had to go right away.
To back up a little bit,
Yeah.
while you're kind of growing up in late 30s and before Pearl Harbor, were you paying much attention to what was happening in the world? There was a war in Europe going on?
Not particularly, but we were, I remember when Pearl Harbor hit on a Sunday afternoon, I went with my friends. We were all about sophomores in high school, and we sat by a radio and listened to what the newscasts coming out of Washington, D.C. or New York. And we were amazed. First of all, Jim, we didn't know where Pearl Harbor was.
Sure.
Not too many people knew that. But we found out very shortly it was part of Hawaii, and up to that point, we didn't know how many people were hurt or killed or ships lost or whatever.
Yeah.
But
kind of a shock at that point. Now, did life change at all in your community once the war started?
Yes, I would assume it did. I was only about 16 when the war started, and 15, 16. But I remember the big thing was that gas stamps came in, and that put a crimp in a lot of people's driving in those days. I didn't drive. I couldn't drive. I was too young. But that changed. And then there were certain food items that all of a sudden they were. I remember it gradually. They were sent to the military. I can't remember what they were.
Well, things like sugar and coffee, all sorts of things.
Oh yeah, sugar.
Meats
That's
were rationed.
right, sugar.
Yeah, so you had rationing, all of those things going on.
That's right.
Now, when you finished high school, did you consider going ahead and enlisting, or were you going to wait for Uncle Sam to find you?
I was given my draft notice already.
Okay.
At the end of high school, and I went on to college, and we just simply waited. Well, in fact, I believe I did try to enlist in the Navy, Air Corps, because my brother was already involved in that, and he was in the Navy Air Corps in the Chicago area, in a Navy Air Station, in an office. All he did was type memos or whatever in those days. But I couldn't, they were closed, I couldn't get in, so I just waited for the draft.
Okay.
And I went on to college.
So basically, you knew you were going in at some point, but in the meantime, you might as well go to school.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's right.
All right. And so now, when did you have to actually report for service?
I think it's March the 20th of 1943,
Okay.
when I reported at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, down in downtown Chicago.
Okay. And then once you, were you just processed there and then sent somewhere else for training?
Yep.
Okay.
We were processed there, and then I was shipped to Fort Knox, Kentucky. And that was a big training camp, and we didn't know until we got there as 18-year-old kids that it was a tank training facility and a big camp or big fort.
Right.
Fort Knox, Kentucky. And
Now, did you just do basic training there?
no, here's what happened. I was shipped to Fort Knox, and we started basic training with a lot of marching and then we were put into tanks. And the first tank I got into, I thought, man, this is not for me. When they shut the lid, and I'm in that you can't get out. I figured someday that it might be shelled, and I thought, boy, I've got to get out of this. And sure enough, on the bulletin board was a notice. We could apply for something called ASTP. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Army Specialized Training Program, which shipped you off to a college. And believe it or not, within a couple of weeks, I was accepted to go to Muskingum College, not Muskegon, Muskingum camp or in college in New Concord, Ohio. That was about 40, 50 miles south of Columbus. A wonderful little school. And I was there for 9 months with 400 other GIs, Army boys. And we went to school from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. And I got 2 years of college credit. But should I finish this? Yes. We were there, and when we were finished, we were also, all 400 of them, we were supposed to go to officers candidate school. Okay, well, before the 9 months ended, about 8 months and a half or so, all of a sudden they said, we're having graduation early. And Senator Robert Taft, of the famous Taft family of Ohio,
Right.
he was coming from Washington to give the commencement address. And at first we were saying, wait, what's going on? But we weren't told any information for a couple of days. And then all of a sudden, before he got there, they said, you're not going to officers candidate school. And you could have heard most of the guys say, whoa, because some of them had already bought their officers' uniforms. We were shipped to Camp Swift, Texas. The reason we were told D-Day was coming up, we were losing too many troops in North Africa, and they needed more infantrymen. Did I say that right?
Oh, yes.
So we were sent to Camp Swift, Texas, where we were trained. That's where we were trained.
Okay. I want to pause here for just a moment.
Sure.
This is... Okay. Now I'd like to back up a little bit and fill in something about the time that you spent at Muskingum College. You said you were basically in class pretty much all day. When did you get any work done? Or was it all done during class? Or
We did our work in class, and we studied at night too. Yeah, it was very comprehensive, and we had some very good professors, and they came from other colleges in Ohio. I think of Worcester and Oberlin, and this goes back many
Sure.
years, Jim. I can't remember all the colleges, but
it's how a lot of the colleges functioned during the war.
yeah. Before I should say this, before on my way from Fort Knox, Kentucky, the first stop was from Ohio State University. We spent 3.5 to 4 weeks there, and getting prepared to go to Muskingum College. But Ohio State, of course, we were indoctrinated with Ohio State football, even in those days. I wish I could remember the name of the famous, one of their better coaches way back in the 1940s. But Ohio State was Mr. Football's school.
Right, even then.
Even then, yeah.
Now, were there any women on those campuses, or did you never see them?
Oh yeah. But we were in uniform. We were in Army uniform, and we went to Muskingum. There were women there too, but they were separate, almost separate. We were totally separate. We took over the gymnasium. We had 400 of, I'm sure it was 400 of us, and we ate in their dining rooms too. But we ate separate.
Right.
And we didn't really mix up too much with them.
Okay. Now, did they give you a break at Christmas? Did you get to go home, or?
You know what? I wish I could. I guess I did. I don't remember.
Okay.
You know, hate to say that.
Well,
You'll say, "What's wrong with that guy? Doesn't he remember anything?"
just asking, because sometimes there's a story there, and sometimes not. Okay. But there was early 44 then, though. Your program is shut down. Now, did Senator Taft actually come out and speak to you?
Yeah, he did. He came and gave a commencement address, and then he knew we were going to be shipped to Texas for training, and that's where we ended up in Camp Swift, Texas, and very infantry training. We learned how to do rifles and shoot and march, and we were in very good physical condition, because that was insisted upon.
Now, when you were doing the college classes, did you have any PT there too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So they're getting you in shape already.
We did a lot of marching. We used their football field. Of course, most of their men were in the service too. I might back up a minute, Jim. Muskingum College is probably not too well known, except for the one famous graduate that they had, among others probably, John Glenn.
Okay.
He was a graduate, and of course, after the war, I mean, I understand, I didn't go back there, but they made quite a big to-do about the fact that they had the first, was he the first astronaut? One of the very first.
He was one of the, I mean, Alan Shepard was the first to go up, but Glenn was the first one to orbit the Earth.
That's right. John Glenn, famous, and he married, his sweetheart was on the campus. She was the daughter of the college physician. I remember that. But anyhow, that was way back.
Now, how did they get you from Ohio down to Texas?
Railroad cars.
Okay. And what kind of setup did they have for you?
Just regular coaches. Yeah, coaches we went through. I forgot if we went through Cincinnati. I don't remember how we did it. But we went to Camp Swift. Not in trucks, no, in railroad cars. And we got down there. Then there were some of them were separated from infantry. Some went into the artillery, and others went to the medical corps, wherever they needed us. Right. But most of us were put into the infantry because they needed. We called ourselves cannon fodder. in preparation for D-Day in Europe.
Okay. Now, were you part of a unit at this point? Were they forming a division there?
Yeah, we were 102nd Infantry Division and divided up into battalions and then companies, and I was assigned to the Company A, 405th Battalion.
Well, regiment, that would be your
Regiment, yeah.
And 1st Battalion, 405th Regiment, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah. People will want to, when they look it up, that's how they do it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No?
If I forget a few things, it's
That's
because
fine.
I
That's
don't
fine.
remember it all.
Okay, but you were in A company in the 405th.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Now, did
And
you,
our company commander for the company was Captain Jimmy Corner. I didn't know him from Adam, but he was drafted out of Hollywood. He was a Hollywood movie actor.
Mhm.
We thought, hey, pretty handsome guy, but so what, you know? He went overseas with us too, but anyhow.
Okay. Now, when you were at Camp Swift, did they make you go through all of basic training?
Basic training,
So begin
every
from the
bit
beginning.
of it, every
Okay.
bit. We were there probably, I think, 3 months of real hard basic training, everything. Learning how to fire weapons, crawl under barbed wire fences, and strictly how to dig foxholes and all that. And oh yeah, in Camp Swift, Texas,
Okay.
just outside of Austin.
Okay. And did you get the chance to go into Austin at all and do anything?
I don't remember going into Austin. No, we stayed right on the camp for the weekend because that was it. That was our life,
Mm-hmm.
and we stayed on the camp.
Okay. Now, did you have a specific assignment within your company? Were you just a rifleman, or did you do something else?
Yep, I was a rifleman, and then I was assigned to be the first scout, and that just held that position from when we left Camp Swift. If you want me to follow that, where we went from there, we went to.
Well, why don't you just define a little bit what the job of the first scout is?
My job was to go ahead of our company. I stretched way out ahead, maybe some 200, 300, 400 yards, all by myself. And then there was a second scout back with me. And in those days, we didn't have anything. It was signal like that. And if we got shot at, we hit the ground. We hit the ground fast. We get shot at Camp Swift. That was not until we got overseas.
Right. Now,
We learned all that. That was my assignment, to be the
Okay.
first scout.
and how did you wind up with that job?
I don't know. I guess it was my, would you say personality or whatever. I didn't ask for it, but I was assigned to it.
Lucky you.
I was in good physical condition, and
Okay, and you were a college guy by then, so.
there were other college
yeah.
guys with me
Yeah.
too, and some of them were terribly disappointed, and they moaned and moaned because they thought by now they would be in officers candidate school, but we passed it over. We said, hey, they need infantrymen. We can't help it.
Okay. So when did you finish at Camp Swift?
When?
When, yeah.
About 3 months after we were sent there, and I would say that was right about D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't in D-Day.
Yeah.
D-Day was, I forget exactly.
D-Day was in June.
June.
June 44.
Okay, so we probably finished in June, maybe the 1st of July, because then, you want me to follow
Yep.
from that? We went, after we finished that, we were told where we're going. We're going to Europe. We went on trained cars, coaches again, not Pullmans, coaches, to outside, like up to Princeton, New Jersey, if I recall. And we assembled in Princeton. And I can't remember how it all happened, but then at night, after 2 or 3 weeks in Princeton, in a camp there, not McCoy, Forget what it is.
There were a number of big camps in
Yeah.
New Jersey. It was Camp Kilmer and Camp Shanks.
Kilmer.
Yeah.
You're right. Thank you for we were there, and then after being there about 2 or 3 weeks, had some more shots, you know. We were sent to New York Harbor at night. I remember loading the boat in the middle of the night, and we were, I forgot if there were 2,000 or 3,000 of us on board that ship. It was, if I recall, it was a Swedish ship that we were on board, and I remember them saying as we got out of we went out, launched in the middle of the night. We were part of a flotilla of 50-some ships. And Jim, I don't remember seeing one other ship all the way across, but I remember, should I follow through?
Yeah.
We were left New York Harbor, and there was 50 other ships. I guess they assembled from Virginia to Maryland to all the ports, and we were on a big flotilla, and we heard the ash cans dropped. The ash cans are, you know what the ash cans are.
Depth charges, yeah.
Depth, because we were spotted German subs. But anyhow, I remember that we were told we went crisscross, not crisscross, diagonal.
Yeah, zigzag.
Zigzag, all the way across. And you could tell, yeah, the sun would be here for one time. It took us 9 days to get over to Europe, and we landed outside of Cherbourg in the middle of the night. Again, we were taken off this ship, which we were in double-decker bunks, and we slept the best. It was not a rough trip over. It was very calm. And we were put onto a barge, just a flat-top barge, probably 1,000 or 2,000 of us on that big barge outside of Cherbourg in the dark, and we were sent in and unloaded on the docks, or the docks of Cherbourg. And from that point, we were all organized. Our battalion, our company, and our U platoon, they all stayed together. We knew exactly, and we started walking through the outskirts of Cherbourg, and the D-Day had already happened, probably 30 or 40 days, 35 days.
The official history of your unit says you landed September 24.
Is that when we landed?
Yeah.
All right, then see, that was that one.
So you're about 3 months after D-Day at that point.
3 months after D-Day.
But the battle in Normandy had only been over for about 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
They fought there a long time before
That's
anything else
right.
happened.
We remember walking through on the side of the road as far as 4 in the morning, and then they finally let us just drop, and we just went to sleep right there on the side of the road. But we remember seeing the hedgerows, and we were not committed then yet. We were committed, well, in September, I guess we were committed.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't get up to the sort of front lines or whatever until October, November. In the official history, it says you stopped for a few weeks around a French town called Valognes, and you did some training. Do you remember doing any training in France, or just walking?
We did that training all the time. Yeah, walking and training and all that, right there.
Okay. Now, did they eventually load you up on trucks or trains and move you across Northern Europe, or did you just...
Not yet.
Okay.
We were in France for a while,
Right.
and then we went into, if I recall, we went into Belgium and into Holland, and then to northern Germany.
Right.
And, oh boy, where were we committed? I thought we were committed already in France, but
It says basically, I think what the official history says is that you're kind of up along the Dutch-German border.
Yep.
Kind of south of Arnhem and run near the Rhine River and those areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's right. We were in the way of the Bulge. We were on the left, sort of the northern flank of it. But then, if I recall, of course, you being the history major, we were, right after the Bulge hit, we were immediately assigned to General Montgomery's 9th Army.
Mm-hmm.
And what did, I was a scout. I had to go out at night and find out where they were and go back and give a report. There's German battalion of tanks, 600 yards over there. We guesstimated,
Mm-hmm.
I come back with that report. And I remember night and day, our artillery behind us were firing into the Bulge, so the Bulge wouldn't come north,
Mm-hmm.
but they went straight west, right?
Yeah. I mean, you were a ways north of it, but there was that whole north shoulder, the area of the line north of it, and that's why you were assigned to Montgomery. The American divisions up there went to him, and Bradley got the rest of them. But I guess your unit, you kind of got up into the line there along the Dutch frontier in November, before the Bulge started in December. Do you remember the first time you kind of went in?
Oh yeah. I think we were replaced by the 84th Infantry Division. We replaced the 84th Infantry Division. And I'll never forget, about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, it was getting dusk in the afternoon. And we went up to the line, the first time we were committed. And this guy let out an oath, and he said, "Where in the blankety blank have you guys been? Get in here, here's my foxhole, I'm going." And he went back, and we were committed. It was okay until Bed Check Charlie came over about midnight from the Germans. You know what Bed Check Charlie was? He dropped flares.
Okay.
And
so it's an aircraft?
Aircraft, yeah. It dropped flares. They just wanted to know where we were all, if there were tanks. Of course, our artillery was already covered with a lot of covering.
Camouflage, yeah.
Camouflage, yeah. And we stayed down. We were in, and that's when we learned that the Germans would like to spray their their machine guns 1, 2, 3 feet off the ground and just spray. Oh man, the first time that happened, we didn't, we knew what was good. Keep your head down.
Mm-hmm. So they did that just in case somebody might be coming?
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. Now, how quickly did you have to start working as a scout? The next day, or?
Oh, probably within a few days, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget the first, I found a whole battery of tanks, and I snuck. It was night. Mm-hmm. It was always night, not the daytime. And I didn't have any radios or nothing like that. And I went back and told her there was a bunch of German, what were those tanks called? They were marvelous tanks. The Germans had marvelous tanks.
They had Panthers and
tanks. Yeah. So and our artillery would keep firing and mm-hmm. firing and firing over our heads. Oh boy! Then we would, maybe within a week we would advance, mm-hmm. and we were told, "Let's go. We got to get out of our foxholes and start moving across the fields." Mm-hmm. And when we got fired upon, the first thing you did, you hit the ground and start digging a little hole. Put your head down, because if your head gets hit, that's when I got a shell or a mortar, probably a mortar, dropped not too far from me, and I got hit in the head. Not in the head, excuse me, mm-hmm. in my helmet,
right,
that far above the rim. Had it been the fact that I had tipped my helmet a little bit, I'd be one of the casualties laying in the...
Now, did that happen to you early on? Was it while you were in that still in the time?
We had fought.
Or was that later on?
Later on, okay. We fought several weeks or maybe a month or two. I don't remember how long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Time goes. I just don't remember all these things.
All right. What was the weather like when you got out there?
Cold.
Okay.
Cold.
Was the ground frozen at that point, or could you still dig?
You had to dig. Yeah. But we had we found a way to get more underwear on us. This sounds nasty, but we didn't get a change of underwear for 3 and 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't. Where were we going to go to get it? We were in foxholes.
Right.
We were fighting. Some of my dearest friends was killed right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys I've been in battle with, many of them were gone. There was 2 of us in that platoon that weren't killed. One was Lieutenant Alexander, and if I recall, he was from Kentucky, and the other was me.
Well, killed or wounded, because some can be wounded
Both.
and sent back. Yeah.
Most of them were killed because it was rough.
Now, do you have any sense in terms of time sequence of when things got worse? Was it after you began advancing into Germany, or earlier when you were first on the line, or?
I think it was first on the line, and when the first shells came on, we were battle hardened right away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we just kept advancing. And I remember one of our lieutenants, excuse me, I forget his name. He must have lost his mind or been shell shocked or something, but he got out of his hole. A lieutenant, he didn't wear any bars or anything, but because you didn't identify yourself, he took that shovel and he started saying, "I'll get you, I'll get you." He started walking towards the German lines, and "I'll get you," and we hollered, "Get back here!" All of a sudden, gone just that quick. But he was going to get it with his shovel.
Mm-hmm.
Where he had his gun, I don't know. He probably threw it off. I don't know.
Yeah.
Boy.
When you would go onto the attack, would you do that during the day or at night?
Mostly night.
And
After always sort of in the evening.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'd go as far as we could go. We'd get stopped by artillery and shells, and we learned to dig a hole, get your head in fast, because that spray of machine gun, that was not fun.
When you advanced, would the Germans counterattack and come at you, or would they just shoot at you for a while and then go away?
We would hold our position and keep firing and keep firing and keep firing, and to keep them from coming any closer, any further. And I remember we advanced right into a mass of their camouflage tanks, and we backed off. And that was night, and I'll never forget, we got close enough as infantrymen to hear them talking. And we happened to have one of our men who spoke German. He says, they're examining their tank tracks. They're full of mud and they didn't like it. And their tank tracks, and they were shining flashlights, and they didn't realize we were probably 1,000 yards away from them, or maybe less.
Maybe a little closer if you could hear them.
He could hear them, and they didn't know we were nearby. But then it wasn't long before we send the message back, and artillery would zero in on them.
Right.
There's a bunch of
the artillery is what the Germans didn't like.
That's right, and we didn't like theirs. Didn't like their tanks.
Did you ever actually have to fight German tanks, or did you just?
Yeah, I remember that, but we kept down. We just didn't. A rifle wouldn't do a thing to a German tank.
Yeah. Did you have bazookas or anti-tank weapons?
Anti-tank guns with us, behind us. But that was a different, more or less a different department.
But you didn't have bazookas or anything like that to shoot back at them with?
No.
Yeah. So
there were bazookas in the company, but I didn't use any.
Right. Right, your
I
platoon
saw
wouldn't
them
have
being
it.
used. I saw them being used. But I remember one area where I got this helmet, the shrapnel in my helmet. It was where we had a whole battery of American tanks, Sherman tanks, and 2 or 3 of them were on fire. And I was close enough, and in the shed we had dug a foxhole to get down. It was battle, and I could hear our American soldiers in the tanks. They had the lid open and they were screaming and hollering, and it was on fire, and you could hear the shrapnel going off inside the tank because they kept their weapon, the ammunition inside the tank.
Yeah.
That was no fun. Tank. This one's on fire. That's on fire. I mean, we're talking 50 yards away.
And we at that point, did you ever think back to your time at Fort Knox and that decision to get out of tanks?
I didn't have time to think about it. I didn't have time to think about it. And I don't remember how we advanced with the tanks roaring through us, and then we followed them for a few times. Mm-hmm. And the tanks, boy, they would roar through and they would fire. Oh boy. Anyhow, I made it.
Yeah, I mean, so for you, basically, from the time you got up to the front, from kind of November, really most of the way through the rest of the war, pretty regularly you're in action, on the line, attacking, getting shot at. Yep. And so a lot of it runs together for you?
Yep.
Okay.
I remember I still did some reconnoitering or
scouting.
Going out at night. I'll never forget I think it was December about the 23rd when we heard our own planes come. The weather was pretty bad, mm-hmm. and they couldn't fly for a while. And that's when the American, I guess you call them B-40, what was it? The airplane that we bombed the Battle of the Bulge gang with, and all the factories.
Well, it was a B-17, B-24.
B-17s, yeah. They came over in just swarms of them, and we couldn't believe it. See, we had no communication. Mm-hmm. We didn't know what's going on, frankly, mm-hmm. except when the commanders say, let's go, fire, weapons, get you going. And, oh man, we would see Germans getting out of their fox. Some of them ran, they escaped like we would try to do too, so we wouldn't get killed. But I remember the abundance of airplanes coming over. It was just about, if I recall, Christmas Day or the day before.
Yes, right around Christmas, the skies cleared enough to make that possible.
The skies cleared enough. And I'll never forget, this sounds, maybe you don't want this, but we were close enough to other foxholes, and one of our sergeants, I wasn't a sergeant yet. Oh, I guess I was a three
buck sergeant. Yeah.
Yeah, I was promoted because most of our sergeants were killed. Mm-hmm. I had battlefield promotions, very honestly. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget some A-20s airplanes came over, and one was shot not far away from us, way up there, maybe several thousand feet. And this, when he was shot, you could see the puff of smoke. And this sergeant had been in Italy, or in North Africa, excuse me, and he was experienced. And he kept hollering, "Where's the parachute? Where's the parachute? No parachute. Nope. Look, no parachute." That's three men ran that airplane, right. A-20s, if I recall. And he said, "Where's the parachute?" "No parachutes." He said, "No parachutes." And he kept coming down, "No parachutes." What he was concerned, the guys were killed when they were in that plane. And when that happens, you would say, "Oh, brother, it makes you grow up awful fast." But he said they didn't make it. They didn't make it. But that was experience from an old timer.
Okay. Did you see much of German aircraft?
Enough. Not as much as as the airmen did.
Yeah.
A lot of that was way up there, way up there. We could see, well, every once in a while we'd see a battle or one of our planes. I don't even remember. I take that back. They might have been German planes because we had anti-aircraft going like crazy.
But you didn't get attacked by German aircraft very often?
We did on the road one time. We were on on a road marching and we hit the side, and that was the only time I remember being strafed.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't hit us. They didn't hit our particular battalion. They might have hit one of the other regiments ahead of us. But I remember seeing those planes. Whew.
Now, when you were advancing kind of across Germany, did you mostly stay out in the countryside, or did you go into cities and towns?
Countryside. Most of the towns were deserted by then. All the German, as far as we know, they were deserted. And we never went to, we did see Cologne. We were outside of Cologne, way out in the outskirts. We watched the American bombers just devastate Cologne. I mean, devastated. We watched that. We were sitting in a foxhole several days, just the same foxhole. Couldn't move. But
right. And
most of the time we were in the countryside.
Right. Okay. And then did the German civilians mostly just disappear? Did you see much of them? No. Okay.
Where they were, we don't know.
Okay, get out of the way.
They were out of the way.
All right. And do you remember crossing the Rhine River?
Yeah, we walked across it. And that was it. And not in trucks. Walked across it.
Was it a pontoon bridge you were on?
Yeah. I don't remember exactly where it was. I don't think it was Remagen. We weren't on that one.
No.
There were other bridges.
Yeah.
That was the famous one.
Because that was the first one that we actually captured, but we crossed in a lot of places after that.
Yeah,
so
right.
You're going forward. Now, and then you mentioned before the interview started that at one point you saw the Germans actually launch a V-2 rocket.
Yeah, and I cannot remember. Jim, I wish I could remember if I had written these down, but you can't write it down. There's no pen and paper. But I remember off in the distance, some of the guys said, "What was that? What was that?" Well, here I am, about 19 years old. Never heard of a German rocket yet. I didn't, and most of us didn't. What was that? I remember it was way off in the distance. It's like watching something off of Cape Canaveral down from a mile away or so.
Right.
But I understand they were trying to get those over into Britain. Isn't that true?
Yeah, they shot them at Britain and at Antwerp in Belgium, the big harbor there.
Yeah.
So they weren't shooting at you anyway.
No. But we were. Then we went up as far. We fought right up till the Roer, R-O-E-R River.
Yeah, we were there fairly early on.
Yeah. We stayed right there,
Yeah.
and I remember our artillery behind us. That was what saved us. Our artillery behind us. Right. And they kept firing into the thing. I was asked. The war was winding down. This was probably April or.
Well, you crossed the Rhine in early April. By early May, you're close to the Elbe River.
Right, Elbe, and wasn't there a Roer River too?
Well, the Roer River is the area that you started out in and fought in early on.
Oh, okay. This is Elbe.
Yeah.
Elbe, yeah. I remember they finally let us go into that old town that was evacuated, and we found some old houses. We slept in those because the war was starting to diminish. And I'll never forget one of our commanders said, "Who wants to volunteer to go into Berlin to get one of our wounded airmen. And I'll go. I volunteered to go. I went in on a Russian truck
Okay.
from the other side of the Elbe River. The Russians were over there already. And the war was really winding down.
This would be, or maybe just about over at that point.
Yeah. And I went in on a Russian truck, couldn't talk Russian, they couldn't talk English, and I rode with them. But I was told that to get an American, they took me to a field hospital, and there was one of our airmen. I said, "Hey, Joe, how are you?" Boy, he perked up. He was pretty badly wounded. And we got him, put him on this truck, took him back to the front lines. And I was so sorry I didn't try to get his name and his address. I would have tried to write a letter to his folks that I saw him, whether he died or not. But as soon as I got back, it was about a 10-mile trip into the outskirts of Berlin. Why I did that, I don't know. But
well, they asked. I think Berlin is a little bit farther east than that, but yeah, so you were going into East Germany and into the Soviet zone. I've never heard of someone doing that way, so that's really something new.
Yeah, I did it.
But they did, but if it was reasonably close to your front line, then maybe they just arranged that.
Yeah.
But then that could have been before the end of the war too, because they weren't in the city of Berlin.
Well, yeah, it was. We didn't worry about shells or anything like that, so it must have been at the end of the war.
Yeah. What impression did you have of the Russians?
Shook their hands. I got pictures of upstairs. I got a picture of me with shaking hands with 2 or 3 Russian officers, and I rode in a truck with them. I was in the back of this flatbed truck, and they were talking, and I wasn't saying a word. I didn't know anybody. Here was just walking in, but I was so happy to see that airman, and was he happy to see me? And I said, "We're going back. You're going to go to an American hospital." Oh, he was pretty wounded.
Yeah. Okay. Now, while you were up there along the Elbe, right at the time the war ended, did the Russians ever come over to visit you, or did you just stay on your sides of the river?
They were staying on side. We were at a town. I remember the name of the town, Tangermunde.
Okay.
You've never heard of that?
No.
Tangermunde. It was they had a big candy factory. There was nobody around. Nobody around. We found out we could bunk down in this big factory, so it wasn't demolished. But no candy. But that's where they made candy. But it was, and then we just waited there till they finally signaled that the war is over. We couldn't go into Berlin. We couldn't go in there because that was divided city. You know all about that. We had 1/3 of it, and the Russians and the British had the other third. Am I right?
Yeah, I think the French were there.
Or French.
Yeah, but the Western Allies had their pieces, and the Russians had theirs. But that was all a little island in the middle of what became East Germany, and you were in what was West Germany at that point, or what become West Germany at that point. Now, as the war was ending, did you see very many German POWs?
Oh yes. Oh yes, I guess I have some pictures. They came over to our side. I dare say by the thousands, and we watched them come, and we just kept them moving. Go back, keep going back. We were on right there by Tangermunde. They came across on this broken down bridge. They wanted to surrender to the Americans.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Not to the the
Russians.
Russians.
Russians were not very nice to them.
No, we were surrendering, and we made sure that they dropped their pistols. I'll never forget. I never saw such a big pile of pistols and weapons. When they came across this bridge, they came over by the hundreds, and we had a lot of GIs watching the whole thing, and we were right there at the front where they were coming, some of the guys probably searched them too, but they were happy to drop their pistol because the war was over.
Right. Now, what did these guys look like to you? Were they mostly about your age, or were there some who were older or younger?
My age.
Okay.
Yeah, many of them my age, and I couldn't tell if they were
Okay.
older or younger.
And as you moved across Germany, or once the war ended, did you see any sort of displaced persons, people who'd been laborers wandering around, things like that?
No, I take it, go back. Can I retract some of
sure.
what? We overran a place where they cremated Jews, like a Dachau. It was not Dachau.
Yeah,
it
but a
was
concentration camp. So
a concentration camp. We overran one of those. And I'll never forget when we came upon that. The German armies were already, they were pushed back. They were pushed back. There was this big place, like a farmland, acres. And we saw this. I'll never forget our company commander. It was not Captain Corner because he was killed. I forget who, I don't remember him. He went in there, he came out weeping. And we wondered because we had to stay back and you never know we would get attacked yet. He said, I've never seen anything like this, where he saw where they put the bodies of German Jews, Jews,
yeah.
put them on the gurney in a roller, put them into these huge ovens and come back. Jim, I saw with my own eyes a pile of human ashes and bones, probably 8 feet high, out off to the side. And we saw that as young guys, we didn't know about Dachau at that point. We didn't know about it because there was no community. How do you know about it? No newspapers or nothing like that. We saw all this. The Germans had fled, but there was a place where they were put their bodies in these big ovens, and there were beds like a dormitory where they would sleep until they called their number and they would get them. And boy, oh boy, that was really, we saw that stuff firsthand. And I'll never forget everybody quiet.
Right.
It was heart-wrenching.
Okay, you really didn't even know what to make of it at that point because you were saying you didn't
know.
Yeah, because we didn't publicize a lot about what the Germans were doing to the Jews at that point.
Right.
We did later, but not then.
The word came down quite rapidly that was for Jews, not for
not for POWs.
First of all, we thought maybe POWs, but we found out that was where they did the Jews. But not until way after, later on, we heard about Dachau, which was a famous one. But I personally saw the pile of bones and human ashes and bones.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that sight.
All right. Now, once the war ends, what happens to your unit? Do you stay in the same area? Do you move somewhere else?
Well, we stayed in the same area to start with.
Okay.
And immediately the word came down that you guys are going to we wanted to start training you for Japan. Well, what kind of training is going to be different? So what happened is we started, marching and rifle training and right where we were at yet. And we didn't have tents or anything. We probably just slept in the local houses, whatever, because the war was over. We were training for Japan. And then they sent, it wasn't maybe, do I dare say a month or two, that they shipped us to Camp Chesterfield. They had all these camps up by Luxembourg. We went by trucks up to Luxembourg, where we were billeted or slept. Those are big tents. We slept there, and we were supposed to be being trained, but
The bomb gets
The
dropped.
bomb dropped, and immediately, I say immediately, right away, the officers in charge said, no, forget it, just stay in good training. But then we weren't allowed to go home yet, because you went home by the length of service
Right.
overseas. Well, I didn't have enough service overseas compared to some of these old guys that came from North Africa.
Right.
They were the first to go out of Camp Chesterfield. They named them after cigarettes.
Yeah.
I forget.
Chesterfield's Lucky Strike over by Le Havre and other ones like that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah. So we had all we did was go to the baseball field, play baseball, sports, and occupy our time. And
In that area, could you go off the base and see places and go?
no. The only time you put in your request to go to England, I was sent to England,
Okay.
where I went to Shrivenham. I was one destination, Shrivenham University, in I don't know, maybe Shrivenham, England. I was there for 3 months, and like I said, I studied history, English, and music, I believe. We were in a choral group.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were there for 3 months. When we were done, they brought in, this wasn't 200 guys, it was probably 1,000 guys. They had to do something with us to keep us occupied until we could be shipped home. In the meantime, thousands of guys were getting shipped home, those that had length of service. Africa and
Right.
Italy, and they were brought into where we were too. But
Do you remember roughly when it was that you were in England? Was it in the fall or the winter or?
it had to be, let me see, fall, I believe.
Yeah, because you went home in the early spring of '46, so
46.
so.
It might have been winter, because we weren't back in Camp Chesterfield long, and most of us were the same number, and we got on the same ship coming back. That's another experience. But we had a good time in England, and I remember going to Westminster Abbey when they took us a truckload of us from Shrivenham down to Westminster Abbey, and we saw some of the famous graves, and I don't remember who they were.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
various kings and queens and other famous people.
Yeah. But then we went back from Shrivenham back to right by Luxembourg, where
Okay.
that camp was.
Yeah.
And then they brought us up to Cherbourg. Was it Cherbourg?
Or Le Havre, which was more
Le
common.
Havre, yeah. That's where we got the boat to come. Now, that was an experience coming home.
Okay.
If you want to hear
Sure,
about
yeah.
that, we were on the ship, and that was another trip of 8 or 9 days, and it was rough. And I was in a bunk much of the time, seasick, along with most of the other guys on that ship. The ship was just going, I mean, like that. We couldn't go into the hospital on the board ship. You know why? It was already full of sailors.
Yeah.
So and it was a mess. We couldn't eat. If you ate, you couldn't eat.
Yeah.
We were sick most of the time. I was sick. It was so wonderful to see the New York Harbor. Oh my, we were.
Now, how big a ship was this? How many? Was it just like
probably a couple thousand.
Okay, so still a fairly good sized transport.
Oh yeah.
But the weather was just bad enough that
Oh,
you were all sick.
Northern. It was a
nor'easter or something like that.
Yeah, it was probably like in February or
or March. Yeah.
Or March, yeah. Because that's when I was discharged in March. Got off the boat and we got on the trains and went to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, right through Chicago. I wish they had let me off there because I lived out in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
Went right to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and that's where we were discharged.
Okay, I'm going to pause right here because this tape is about up. All right. Now we followed your story to the point where you had basically gotten yourself off the ship. When you got off the ship, New York Harbor, did you go right on trains or did you just go to a camp for a while first?
No.
Just straight on the trains. Okay.
As far as I remember, we went right on trains.
Okay. Okay, so Camp McCoy, you get your discharge there.
Discharged in Camp McCoy.
All right. And then what did you do once you were discharged?
I went home. And I went to, let's see, I was going to sit around a while and get my bearings. So I went to, my folks used to go vacationing over here at Maranatha by Muskingum.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, why don't you go up there? And it was, and I went up there and worked the whole summer. And I worked through the whole summer. I went back to Chicago, worked for my dad, didn't go back to school right away. I just not quite ready for it, I thought. And I worked for my dad in the publishing business. I was in the warehouse and just worked for him and all the year. And then I went back to Maranatha for the next summer.
And what were you doing up there?
Outside work and learning to do office work and whatever. And whatever else, I did everything. We had a golf course there. I took care of that and enjoyed myself. Sat on the beach too for much time, and that's where I met my wife. And then we came back to, she persuaded me to come back to Grand Rapids, where I enrolled with her to the Grand Rapids School of the Bible and Music. And I learned how to lead singing there and went to school there and got married. Led singing at the Big Calvary Church in Grand Rapids. You ever hear of it?
Oh, yeah.
And I was music director there on a part-time basis, way back in 47, 48, 48, and 49. And in 49, Lorenz Company, which my dad worked, asked if I would take set up an office in Memphis, Tennessee. And we wanted to expand the company. And so I went to Memphis, Tennessee with my wife. And we set up the branch office down there in Memphis, and my territory was from El Paso, Texas, to the Atlantic Ocean and south of Louisville. And I covered that whole area once a year, calling all kinds of catalog houses, music stores, bookstores, catalog houses would sell our music, and we did that for 10 years. And then I came back to Grand Rapids, where I was involved with Zondervan. You've heard of Zondervan?
Publishing company, yep.
I was with them for 25 years or so, I can't remember.
Okay, so you were living in Memphis like that then, like in the 1950s, and that's the era of segregation and civil rights and all of that.
Yeah, about 54.
Yeah.
But there was something else happened in Memphis while we lived there, and his name was Elvis Presley.
Yep.
And the town was swamped with Elvis Presley, everything. It happened when we were there.
Right.
And I saw him right down there by the Memphis Press Scimitar building, and he was driving by with a couple of guys in a Lincoln, one of those Lincoln Continental things that, who else had a Lincoln like that? There was Elvis. But the paper followed him. We read about Elvis, and he was so big, so big. That was before he bought Graceland. And he was a neighbor to one of our friends. And they used to tell us how the people would come just to go to Elvis, past Elvis' home, and they would park right in the middle of the street and get out and walk to his house. But That was
Wow.
yeah. We had a good time down in Memphis.
Mhm.
We did. We had enjoyed it. 10 years. Spent 10 years there. 2 children born there, and they were born in the Baptist Memorial Hospital. And then a guy by the name of Shirley. What was the name of Danny Thomas? Is it Danny Thomas that had
Marlowe?
that? Yeah, Marlowe, his
His
daughter.
daughter, yeah.
He started that big children's hospital
Right,
down there.
right. St. Jude's or
St. Jude's,
There you
yeah, you got it, Jim.
TV commercials for that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We saw that happen, not happen, we
Yeah.
were there when he came and started that hospital, and I guess it's really something today.
Yep.
He started that.
Still going. No. When you think back to the time that you spent in the service, how do you think that affected you, or what did you take out of that?
Well, I took, when I got hit, I said, "Thank you, Lord.
Mhm.
I didn't get hit, I didn't get killed. Had I been killed, but when I came back, I made sure that I made myself right with the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and committed my life to Him and whatever He enjoyed. So that's when I got into leading music.
Right.
Now, I'm not a choral director like you have at Grand Valley
Mhm.
or at Calvin or at Cornerstone.
Mhm.
Where I have led choirs. I led choirs at Calvary Church way back.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I enjoyed it. I still, at 91 years of age, I still lead the hymn sings at Calvary Church. We get about 350 to 400 people come in and sing the old hymns. They love to sing them,
Mm-hmm.
and I lead them. Jim, if it was you, they would say, have Jim Smither do it,
Yeah.
not Maurice Lehmann.
All right.
But
Did
anyhow,
you think you got any kind of practical knowledge or experience from being in the Army?
Yeah, discipline. Oh yeah, discipline. I'm sure that helped. And I learned that even eating, you don't leave crumbs on your table. Because in the training camps, if you sit around a table with 8 guys on a bench, and they say, "Please pass that last pork chop." Okay, and if it came down, and if somebody speared that and put it on their plate, I've seen fist fights. I'm not kidding you. I've seen where the guy that said, "I asked for it," he'd come over and they would have a fist fight because of, I've seen that happen. Oh, I don't know if that's, but I've learned to be trained well, and discipline is important, and patience, I guess patience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Actually, the pork chop incident reminds me of another question. When you were up in the lines and in Germany and fighting, how did you get fed?
That's a good point. We had what were these
rations?
K rations. We would try to get 2 or 3 of them stuffed in our jackets, because we couldn't wear overcoats or
Mm-hmm.
nothing. All we had was jacket with a band of ammunition over our shoulder and a water can, and anything else we did.
Well, did you have?
We ate those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would sneak them up to us at night. But one time we were cut off. We were cut off when I mentioned when one of our men could understand German.
Mm-hmm.
We were close enough to those tanks, and we were cut off. We couldn't get forward or backward, and we were in a field of beets, turnip beets,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned how to dig those out while you're in your foxhole. We stayed down in the
Mhm.
daytime. We just kept down, and we would get a turnip, and I ate some turnips. I had those for several days until we could crawl back, get back. When those tanks they would go back. They thought nothing going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Those are German tanks. We ate some turnips. I had a couple of days worth of those. And
So raw turnips?
What?
Raw turnips? I mean,
Oh yeah.
you couldn't really cook them, I don't think.
You dig them out of the ground and just wipe them off best you can. You didn't get sick.
Yeah.
You couldn't. You still had a little water, but you didn't drink all your water.
Mm-hmm.
Not when you're cut off, because you had no place. You couldn't get them. Shirley, you got the phone?
All right.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So, all right. Now, when things were quieter, I mean, did you have field kitchens that would bring you stuff, or when you were up front, was it always just K rations?
K rations, yeah. Field kitchens were back.
Mm-hmm.
They were back there by the artillery guys and the
Right.
tank guys who were helping us. They were firing
Mhm.
over our heads. You know, we didn't get hot meals. I didn't have a hot meal for a long time. We ate K rations, and you'd saw they had a bar of chocolate in there, and I remember just biting that, not biting it, just shaving it off a little bit at a time to keep it as long as you can. You never know when you're going to get another K ration, and you sit in that foxhole, and you might be in a foxhole 2-3 days, and the guys and your supply sergeant couldn't get up to you.
Mm-hmm.
But then he'd bring a box of K rations, and well, I enjoyed K rations. You had to. That was when we learned to eat Spam.
Mm-hmm. Because these would have a can of something, Spam or
Yeah,
other kinds of stuff.
just Spam, and that was, I guess, some cheese, and it was all in that little box.
Yeah, or some kind of cracker or of some
Yeah,
kind or whatever.
yeah. Yeah, that's it. I hadn't even thought about that, but I know that chocolate, we would bite that chocolate, not bite it, because you want to save it.
Yeah.
And it was very highly concentrated chocolate.
Yeah, and I think they put other stuff in it because it was a way of getting you nutrients or food.
That's
Yeah.
right. That must have been it. That was, we're talking about 1940.
Well, yeah, only 70 odd years ago.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
But you're talking about communication.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't, it was all by by word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had some telephones on some of the Jeeps way in the back. But we wouldn't see too many Jeeps where we were,
No.
nor trucks, no way. Tanks? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we would follow our tanks on an advance. But I'm just the same old guy. I'm no hero. I told you that before, Jim. I'm no hero.
But
I
you were
just
pretty
did-
much the same guy when you came out that you were when you went in?
Probably, probably so. Yeah.
All right. Well, whether you think so or not, it was a good story. So thank you very much for taking the time to share it today.
Well, thank you for. You're welcome.